I'd like to start this video by telling the story of how I got exposed to a certain game for the very first time and how I got to where I am today. While I was and always have been a goofy little guy spending most of his time locked away in his room, I was originally told about this game through a meme so mainstream that practically everyone in my year at school had heard of it. So sit back, relax, and let me cast your mind back to 2018.
You don't know the way.
Yes, I do.
Do you know the way?
I know the way.
You have to have Ebola to know the way.
I have Ebola.
He doesn't know the way.
To know the way,
To know the
you
way,
need to
you
have
have to know the
Ebola.
If you're confused, this video originates from VRChat, a video game released for PC and later Oculus devices that is void of goal, of character, and of story. Instead, you go in with an avatar of your choosing and hop from world to world, staying as long as you like, interacting with the environment, maybe playing some mini-games, and, as the name suggests, chatting with other players. Truly, it was the metaverse before the metaverse and is entirely reliant on a dedicated fanbase for success. And it was through this video, this one sentence, that enlightened me to the world of VRChat. I found the game funny, and I enjoyed the content that some YouTube channels made on it. But alas, I did not have a PC, and if my mother found out I was talking to strangers online in any form, I would almost certainly have been heavily monitored from then on, have my internet privileges cut off, and maybe even lectured on the dangers of the World Wide Web. So, as the meme died off, so did my interest in the game, and I forgot, like most people. What never left my field of infatuation was my love for virtual reality itself. Games like Beat Saber, Job Simulator, Arizona Sunshine, Super Hot VR, games that are defined solely by their VR mechanics are what really caught my attention. While the clue is in the name, most footage I had seen of VRChat was from the game's desktop mode, a feature that allows you to control your character with the typical WASD configuration that we're all familiar with. Eventually, I managed to get my hands on an Oculus Quest 1, a bulky, underpowered but functional little guy. While I expected to spend most of my time on it with more gamey type games, it was here that I was reminded about VRChat, and thus, 14-year-old me was introduced to realities that were not very healthy. Not to be hyperbolic, but VRChat is unironically one of my favourite games of all time. Every time I open up the menu, hear the little beeps and boops of the UI and hear that generic lo-fi hip-hop, I just get happy. Nothing else in my mind comes close to the sense of comfort that this game gives me. Ooh, it feels so good. But why? Why does this game that only takes up about a gigabyte captivate me so? And how does it manage to maintain its audience of tens of thousands on just Steam alone? Well. Despite being known for its kooky characters and wacky moments, one part of VRChat that is more so appreciated in silence is the single player experience. Now, that admittedly sounds very funny, given that it is, after all, a kind of social platform, a place to talk to strangers, play games, and make friends in doing so behind the veil of a Walter White avatar. However, I have spent a long time in the game, both in VR mode and desktop mode, and have spent a majority of my time just chilling by myself. And I'm not alone. If you scroll past just the top few most popular worlds, you'll begin to see some of the more experimental projects that are dominated primarily by private instances, or at least instances that are unlisted as public. But why is this? Why bother playing a virtual social simulator and then proceed to be entirely anti-social? I feel it's because a lot of worlds evoke a sense of comfort within the player. After a long day of work, school, maybe you just listen to some bad news and just need to unwind, a lot of VRChat worlds are really good at putting your mind at ease. The only thing I can think of to compare it to, as previously mentioned, are those lo-fi streams or playlists you find on YouTube. Situations that you can immediately insert yourself into and just exist in a slightly calmer environment as a person with slightly less going on. A lot of creators for these worlds aren't interested or are unable to create interactable NPCs to populate their projects, and so simply won't even try. What creators will generally go for is an aesthetic that focuses on environmental beauty. Forests, mountains, lakes, and planets are very commonly depicted in a lot of VRChat worlds. And you can see why. I went outside just recently. And yeah, why not? It's pretty cool. This honestly makes a lot of sense, given that a lot of people live in dense, unwalkable cities, and so will rarely actually see these kinds of environments outside of media representations. In addition to the fact that it's simply something different to look at for a lot of people, these more outdoorsy, naturalistic hangouts provide us with a feeling that can only be elicited through this specific atmosphere. Last year, in my literature class, we spent about a term learning Frankenstein. In chapter 10 of the novel, Victor Frankenstein struggles with grief after a servant woman called Justine is killed after being falsely accused of murder that his monster committed. He seeks solace in Mount Montanvert, where Mary Shelley, the book's author, writes, "The abrupt sides of vast mountains were before me, the icy walls of the glacier overhung me, a few shattered pines were scattered around, and the solemn silence of this glorious present chamber of imperial nature was broken only by the bawling waves or the fall of some vast fragment. The thunder sound of the avalanche or the cracking reverberated along the mountains of the accumulated ice, which, through the silent workings of immutable laws, was ever and anon rent and torn as if it had been but a plaything in their hands. These sublime and magnificent scenes afforded me the greatest consolation that I was capable of receiving. They elevated me from all littleness of feeling, and although they did not remove my grief, they subdued and tranquilized it. In some degree, also, they diverted my mind from the thoughts over which had brooded for the last month." It is this sense of the sublime that I love about VRChat so much. While some avatars can be big, most are supposed to replicate the anatomy of a human, and thus, the environments in which you maneuver topple you in almost every aspect. The infinity of the ocean, the momentum of a storm, the mystery of a soupy jungle, all intent on making you feel that sense of humble belonging, that fearful comfort. This, in conjunction with the common presence of background music or a small shelter, only adds to the feeling of perfect balance and contempt in isolation. When we think of instances in which loneliness has been put to the forefront, we usually think of the horror genre. Aesthetic trends like the backrooms create a sense of unease and smallness within us, almost as if these places should be understood and utilised by humanity, but forgotten, with them only turning angry and bitter as a result. Instead, the solitary worlds of VRChat remind me more so of the works of Edward Hopper, a realist painter from the 20th century that I've seen in more competent video essays. While we wander through these hollow hangouts, our loneliness, while melancholic, is gratifying. Instead of being trapped in these worlds, we're blessed with the knowledge of their existence and are free to do or think as we choose. And lonely doesn't necessarily mean barren. A lot of creator projects are simply just different interpretations of livable spaces, sometimes just single rooms. While small, they are dense and can again evoke comfort from us, whether that be the nostalgia of a bygone childhood or the idealistic fantasy of our dream home. I myself have a cosy little boat floating around in the middle of the night as my starting world when I load in. Either that or we can be whisked away to worlds that exceed attempts to create our preferred hyper-reality. Don't forget, this community is full of nerds, all eager to bring their favourite pieces of fiction to life, from One Piece to Harry Potter to femboy hooters. The community's passion really shows off in these fandom worlds. And I'll admit, it's hard not to be fascinated by seeing locations that you've only read about or seen from an unfavourable perspective actually fully realised in a walkable 3D VR environment with cool avatars to go with it. Now, I understand that there are people who use VRChat for the sole purpose of talking to or annoying other people. But I hope next time you boot it up, my little video makes you take a second to browse through the community tab or just go random. I have a feeling you'll be pleasantly surprised. Whenever the argument of whether video games are a waste of time comes up, it's always the case that the person making such a claim is entirely ignorant on the subject. While most of the AAA big-budget award-winning games are indeed single-player, gaming is still highly capable of being a fun, engaging, bonding experience between friends. I, for one, believe that local co-op video games, as in multiple people in the same physical space playing, is where gaming is at its peak. Phenomena like Wii Sports, Mario Kart, Super Smash Bros. And Halo are what I think of when reminiscing on precious childhood memories, and frankly, I wouldn't change any of them for the world. However, throughout the last few years, developers and publishers have continued to cater more and more to that hardcore competitive scene, and while yes, they still offer accessible chat features, split screen for the most part is dead. Due to changing technologies, changing standards, and the difficulty of meeting friends thanks to a healthy serving of urban city planning and late-stage capitalism, yummy yummy, we cannot replicate the glory days as easily. In this respect, VRChat manages to bridge that gap between instantaneous accessibility and sincere closeness. While other games let you see and hear your friends, you're never really enjoying their presence like you would in the same physical space. As I said previously, a lot of VRChat worlds are simply there for the aesthetic. The real content comes from you just chilling with your friends. And in a game with seemingly endless avatars, some that can even alter and modify the world itself, you really can express yourself in any way you want.
What is this?
The game's status as a VR title is also significant. When I'm playing a horror map, for example, and my friend gets scared, I can actually see their reaction in real time. Some more passionate players even go so far as to get body trackers to further express themselves, allowing them to dance, run, and yes, even sit down, just like in real life. What helps elevate VRChat's accessibility and allows me to enjoy the company of my friends easily is the technical things. Not only does the game take up such little space on a hard drive, but it also manages to run on fairly attainable hardware. Gaming, especially PC gaming, can seem like a daunting experience to those outside of the loop. While admittedly, yes, it can be confusing, VRChat, with its more cartoony art style and smaller environments to load into, can run on a myriad of machines. It's even available on Oculus's Quest series, with the majority of the content being entirely cross-platform.
Let's say, hypothetically,
You've been playing for a while now. You've explored a few worlds, found that perfect avatar and hung out with your Discord kitten until the wee hours of the morning. What now? While I may have made it seem as if VRChat is merely a digital sightseeing scene, the game actually has a pretty flexible programming language called Udon, made by the devs themselves. I won't pretend like I know the details, but it's tools like this along with others that make VRChat such a solid, casual multiplayer experience. Especially with the versatility that VR offers, world creators can get really creative with what they make, some even making actual games inside of the game itself. Sometimes they're just as small as darts or a pool table, but even something as simple as that works surprisingly well in VR and can contribute brilliantly to the type of aesthetic that creators are going for. It was especially during COVID time that many were really missing on that face-to-face interaction, and something as grounded and common as a pool table really served to fill that void. These type of group activities are plentiful in VRChat, from the aforementioned bar games, chess, karaoke, cinemas, Just Dance, Uno, the list goes on. Sometimes, these bite-sized experiences have ballooned into games in their own right with multifaceted mechanics that may take some skill to actually master. My personal favourite has to be anything involving vehicles. I've put God knows how many hours into test pilots, test drivers, and that. And the creators of worlds like this often take into account the social aspects of VRChat, adding entire mechanics around multiplayer combat to smaller elements like more than one seat in your plane. Some games are even built exclusively around being social: Murder Mystery, Truth or Dare, and yes, even Among Us. The power of such a simple game like VRChat is unmatched, not only in terms of sustaining pre-established relationships that are maybe long distance, but also creating new ones. I'll go into this more a little bit later, but it just astonishes me how people can meet and actually become friends just because they happen to be in that right world at that exact right time. Just recently, there was a couple who got married after meeting in VRChat and moved from the US to the UK just to be with them. Despite the implications of the impending cyber dystopian future that will befall humanity, I think that's pretty cute. Okay, so this part of the video is going to be about the wonderful community that makes up VRChat. While a significant majority of my interactions with people have been very, very nice, I can't pretend like it's all positive. The internet is of course the internet, and bad actors are going to show up. Frankly, bad actor is putting it lightly. Given VRChat's free-to-play model of business, anyone and everyone can play, which is great. However, this has led to a relatively prevalent player base of children who are obviously not as adept at spotting dangerous people. Just last year, a BBC reporter decided to install the game and pose as a 13-year-old, to which they were met with invitations to imitate sex acts. With VRChat's variety in the age of its players, in conjunction with its lack of real safeguarding, it's scarily difficult to conceive the number of potential victims that might have been hurt. One of the most infamous VRChat players went by the name of Hypnotist Sappho, a woman who used her position and prestige within the community to cultivate a group of loyal fans that she frequently met in private worlds. Allegedly, she would not only groom minors in these rooms, but also preach about the benefits of zoophilia. When news of this broke out, she uploaded a video to YouTube, leaving out any accusation of grooming but doubling down on her position on bestiality. There's a small genre of YouTube content dedicated to exposing the darker sides of VRChat, whether that be grooming, toxicity, or bigotry. I myself even met a guy who really didn't like Jewish people. It's uncommon but notable enough that I simply had to mention it, not only to not undermine potential victims, but to do the warning that the VRChat devs choose not to do. Anyway, back to the positives. All in all, talking to people in VRChat will remind you of the fundamentals of humanity. In an environment in which the threat of embarrassment or violence is nullified, people can really be themselves. Someone who is irrationally introverted in real life can channel themselves in ways they never could. People who are naturally talented at telling jokes or singing can shine behind the safety of headset lenses and Dell monitors. From my own personal experience, the liberation that such a novelty gives you is exhilarating. Despite finding it difficult to talk genuinely to people even in my own year, I can both perform speeches to a crowd of weebs as well as have a heart-to-heart. It could be that the player base is majority American and so my accent stands out, but I found that people are really willing to talk. They'll just come up to you, maybe comment on your avatar, and the conversation will just flourish from there. Especially with the more fantastical nature of VRChat worlds, there's usually always something to interact with or talk about to alleviate awkwardness. Some worlds are even inclusive of multiple languages, while others will specifically market themselves as being for speakers of certain languages. Sometimes to a pretty mean extent, a select few are actually made for the specific purpose of converging groups. Given VRChat's international player base, creators have made places where people of different countries, different cultures, and different languages can get together and maybe teach each other a few phrases. It's small community acts like this that really show off the power of not only VRChat, but of the internet as a whole. Now, despite writing a script now consisting of thousands of words, I am but a small fry in comparison to some. My 100 hours of gameplay is child's play when looking at those who seemingly make VRChat their real life. It really speaks to me how people can get so tired of modern living that they turn to a fake one just to really be themselves. Some will go so far as to buy the most expensive headsets with body trackers, face trackers even, just to get fractionally closer to that sense of comfort and escapism. Some even get so comfortable that there exists a small but notable NSFW scene, a digital red light district if you will, but I'll let you do your own research on that. As I said at the beginning of this video, a majority of the time I've put into VRChat has been single player. While that's true, I've spent extensive time in public worlds but simply staying mute, choosing only to listen in and observe my fellow players. It's here that VRChat truly exceeds description. You'll sit in the corner quietly and just let the life of another human being wash over you. People you've never met, talking about other people you've never met, drama that you have no means of apprehending and no grounds to criticise, but yet you listen in anyway. In a world that pushes monetizable self-obsession and rewards crippling self-preservation, the ability to just ground yourself and remember that people are so similar yet so different is consoling. They have the same prides, same anxieties, same problems, and seeing it happen is truly beyond words. It just makes me want to become friends with everyone I meet, to be able to finally understand who said what, and why they're a bitch. Even venturing alone, most worlds will be plastered with screenshots of friends posing together, experiencing the same world you're in right now. My mind always races with the possibilities of where these people are now. Are they still friends? Do they even play anymore? What possible chain of events led them to getting that screenshot up there in the first place? I can't help but look at these screenshots and get emotional. These are people who have likely been rejected by people in their own lives, but have found solace with people just like them, and have likely done things with them that have alleviated that pain. But then again, what are communities for? The experiences I've had with VRChat are priceless. Much like the games I played when I was a kid, the game rekindles that feeling of gaming with your buddies. While not entirely the same, VRChat acts as a kind of a new medium for that kind of bonding experience, one that is perfectly equipped for the digital age. With a mostly incredible base of players and creators alike, you really do feel that sense of community, solidarity, comfort, and tranquility. And that is why we love VRChat.